Hey, you're listening to Births at Home, the podcast with me, Esmeralda, the home birth doula. Today we will be chatting with Jen. She shares with us her two hospital birth stories and then her healing home birth story afterwards. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this story. So let's get right in and bring on Jen. Hey, Jen, if you just want to go ahead and share with everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a mom of three, stay-at-home mom of three. I live in central Pennsylvania, York, PA, if anyone's familiar with that. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And my 3-year-old is the one that I had a home birth with. The other two are
Okay.
in the hospital.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Thanks. So your first two were both in the hospital. Do you want to share a little bit about those births first?
Sure. So my first birth was in 2017, and I just, went to my OB and went to all my appointments, did everything I was supposed to do, checked all the boxes. I got to 40 weeks and didn't really seem like anything was going on. And I had an appointment with an OB that I had never met before.
Hmm.
And she basically told me, your baby is going to aspirate on their meconium and
Wow.
die. So
Hmm.
we need to get you set up for an induction.
Hmm.
Um, in my gut, that didn't sound right to me, but I wasn't going to say that's not right. They're the doctor, they
Yeah.
know best.
Hmm.
So I scheduled my induction for 41 weeks and went in at night on, I don't know, I forget what day it was, but went in at night, got the Cervidil, and went to sleep and woke up with really strong contractions. Um, just so painful. And tried a lot of things to help with that, getting in the tub that actually made it worse. And
Yeah.
so ended up getting an epidural. And in the end, 32 hours later after getting there, um, I had to they had to vacuum her out. They were like, okay, you have 3 chances to vacuum her out, and if you don't, we're doing a C-section. So on the
Yeah.
third try, got her out, thank goodness.
Hmm.
Got an episiotomy. I don't think they asked me if I wanted one, but that was probably the worst part of postpartum,
Yeah.
healing from that episiotomy. I couldn't sit right. I had to lay down and breastfeed, and it was very painful. But I just thought, this is what's supposed to happen. This is birth.
Yeah.
Um, so that was pretty traumatic, but I didn't realize it was traumatic until after my home birth.
Hmm.
Um, Second birth actually was not terrible. My water broke on its own at home, and then went into the hospital. They checked, it was my water breaking. Contractions started pretty quickly after that. I asked for an epidural right away because I didn't want to feel the pain. Um, Went to sleep and woke up and felt like I have to push. And
Yeah.
I pushed my baby out in a couple pushes, and that was that. So it wasn't too bad.
Hmm.
So those are my first two experiences with birth.
Hmm. And so what kind of led you from those births to home birth?
Sure. So I didn't know anyone personally who had a home birth. I knew of one girl who was older than me who went to my high school, and I knew she had had a few home births just from Facebook, but personally, I didn't know anyone. Um, and I was pregnant in 2021 with my third, and COVID rules were very strict at that time at the hospital.
Hmm.
And I remember probably halfway through that pregnancy going into an appointment, and the midwife was telling me, if you test positive when you come in for labor, you won't be able to hold your baby unless you're breastfeeding them.
Yeah.
And otherwise, he's going to be in a box, a clear box next to you, and you can't hold him. And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that logically doesn't make sense to me. And I don't want to be in an environment that is so dumb. Like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I was like, I like literally just went home and got on Facebook and looked for like home birth groups in my area.
Hmm.
Made a very like generic post like, hey, I am pregnant for the third time and I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I want to have a home birth. And I had a few midwives respond. And some people, recommended some, and I've reached out to a few, and there was not a lot of midwives that had availability for October. Um, so I did end up having an interview with one midwife, and I had my husband on the phone as well because he had a lot of questions. He was like not on board.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you can ask her all your questions and see what she says because I didn't know what she was going to say either. And she just answered all of our questions. She seemed so knowledgeable and peaceful, and she had a game plan for every scenario that my husband came up with. His like biggest worry was like me like bleeding out,
Hmm.
and so she had her protocol. So she was actually a newer midwife, but she had been a doula for a very long time, and she had been an assistant for a while.
Hmm.
So I didn't feel like I think she had experience, but she was newer to being a midwife. But I just felt so comfortable with her. So
Yeah.
um, we, signed up and I started going to her for my prenatals. I was actually still going to the OB as well because I have a hyperthyroidism and I have very low progesterone and she couldn't fill those prescriptions. So I still had to go to my OB on the side and kind of like go to both.
Yeah.
But it was fine. So yeah, I ended up going with her and she was great through all my prenatal stuff and made me feel like she would talk things out with me. And it was just nice to have a relationship with the same person throughout the whole, experience.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, midwife's care is so like the complete opposite of care from an OB. From like those 5-minute appointments of just like rushing you in and rushing you out to actually sitting
Hmm.
down with someone for an hour and chatting. It's just like a complete 180. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
feel like if a lot more people knew about that and knew it was
Hmm.
available to them, I think more people would choose that. They don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know what you don't know. So,
Yeah, those 5-minute appointments are like what's normal. That's what everybody hears about. So they're like, oh, that's what I'm gonna get. I already know. And then they don't know
hmm
that there's this other option out there. So yeah, I wish more people did know. Maybe they would change their minds, but slow
yeah.
steps. We'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so did you do anything during this pregnancy for like preparing for your home birth that you didn't do for the other two?
Um, for my first birth, I did take a childbirth education class in the hospital. Did nothing for me. Second, I didn't do anything. I was just like, I know the drill. Like, I know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um, and then for my third, I read some like natural childbirth books and I watched home births like on YouTube.
Mhm.
I won't say that I did a ton of like research. That kind of came after my home birth when I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. I need to know everything about home birth and the natural like physiological process of birth. But I think I relied a lot on my midwife and then I did eventually get a doula like later on in pregnancy. I didn't think I wanted one at first, but I
Mhm.
did end up getting one and I relied on her a lot for like just kind of calming me down and like resources and she had just had a home birth, my doula, and so I was just like ask her things, and
Yeah.
she was a good resource. So yeah, I just kind of tried to familiarize myself as much as I could with home birth and like watching it. Though I think the YouTube videos were good too because I
Hmm.
had never seen a birth before. Like,
Hmm.
so it was good to actually see what it could be like in a not so medical environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you kind of want to just go into how labor started and go into your birth story from there.
Sure. So I was 41 weeks one day when labor started. I think I'd had like these like weird pains for like a week or so. But it wasn't labor. It was just kind of like uncomfortable, and I think things were like shifting around. And then finally, the morning of when I was 41 and 1, I started having some contractions at like 6 in the morning. And I was like, okay, I'll just time them on my phone. Um, and they weren't like super regular or anything. And I was like, I read that if I take a shower and things slow down, that's probably not like, go time yet. So I took a
Yeah.
shower and they did slow down. But I just had this feeling like like it was going to be today. So I
Hmm.
told my husband, I was like, you better take off work and like, let's get the kids like to my parents or have them come get them. So my parents came and got the kids, and I just kind of spent the day doing the mile circuit, and I probably should have rested more, but I was like too excited.
Yeah.
um, and then I actually did have an appointment with my midwife scheduled for that day already, and she came around like 2, and I had just taken a walk. Like the contractions were coming stronger, more consistent. But as soon as I got home from that walk, they like slowed down again. I was like, um, so then my midwife came over and I was like, I know it can't really tell me much, but can you just check me? Like, I just want to know. And she was like, if you want me to, I will, but it won't tell you anything. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know, but I just want you to. um, so she checked and she was like, you're like a stretchy too, like,
Mhm.
and I was like, so she left, and I was like kind of bummed out. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna take a nap. Well, as soon as I laid down to take a nap, they got like intense. Yeah. So I think from like probably like 2:30 to like 5, they got more consistent, and I was like on my birth ball. And then I had like something under my knees, and I was just on that birth ball, like just my husband was doing hip squeezes, and that's what got me through. And
Yeah.
when they finally were like, I don't know, probably like 3 minutes apart, lasting like 1 minute for like an hour or so, my husband called the doula, and she was like 40 minutes away, so she came, and then he called the midwife. So I would say probably around like 6, the doula got here, and then like 6:30, the midwife. And from then on, I thought I was like, okay, I want to take a shower. That I love the shower; it relaxes me. And I
Mhm.
didn't like the shower. I was like, okay, I was in there for a little. Then my doula was like, okay, how about you try the toilet? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I probably had like 2 really intense contractions on the toilet, and I was like, okay, I can't like that was like a lot. So I got up
Mhm.
and just kind of like leaned over um my bathroom sink, and just kind of like looked at myself in the mirror and was like, all right, you could do this. And my doula was like whispering like little things in my ear, like little verses and affirmations. um and then I didn't realize this, but at some point someone must have said, "All right, let's fill the tub up," because I didn't tell them to do that.
Yeah.
So they fill up the tub. I got in, and I was just kind of in there for a while, floating around, and um my water broke. I was like, I think my water broke. It's like a little pop. Like I never,
Uh-huh.
well, I guess I'd experienced it with my second, but that was like prom. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'd never experienced it like in labor because the my
Yeah.
first they like broke my water with like little hook thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they got my contractions got like very intense, very close together, and I felt like paralyzed. Like I was like, I can't move. And I think my midwife could kind of see like this was taking kind of a long time. So she was like, how about you get out? Like, why don't you get on the bed? Like, try a different position. And I was like, I can't move. Like, I'm so paralyzed. Um, and then I was able to like kind of like roll myself over and like was leaning over the tub, and um my son's head, like I pushed his head out,
Mhm.
but then it was under the water, or no, he was out of the water, but then like I like leaned down and he kind of like went back underwater, and my mid was like, nope, nope, we can't do that, like he needs. So she was like, you need to get out of now. And I don't know how I got the strength, but I like hopped out of that tub and got in a lunge, and just
Yeah.
like my midwife, he had shoulder dystocia, so my midwife, she just like stuck her hand up there and did one like quick move, and he came right out. Like
Mhm.
she knew what she was doing, thank goodness, because I know that
Yeah.
could have been bad. But she, I mean, she knew what was going on and she took care of it, and it was great. I like am very, I'll always be very grateful to her for like that knowledge.
Mhm.
So yeah, I laid down on the floor and held him, and my placenta came out probably like a half, I don't know, half hour later. And then I felt I wanted to take a shower because I know I'd had kind of pooped in the tub. So I was like, I want to like shower.
Yeah.
So my husband like held our son and they did all the weight things, and I took a shower, and my doula sat in the bathroom with me just to make sure that I didn't like pass out or anything. And we just had like this very normal conversation, like, oh, like, what are your plans for next week? Like, it was just
Yeah.
so funny. Like, here I'm like completely naked. I just had a baby, and you're just like sitting here making sure I don't pass out. But we're like having this like friendly it was, I don't know, it was just like surreal.
Mhm.
But it felt like good. Like it felt like the people that were in my space like
Mhm.
cared about me, and like
Yeah.
um it was just like, I don't know, it was like a nice vibe. So I got out and like got in bed with him, and we just kind of like laid there, and the midwife went over like all the stuff to look out for, and my doula had started the laundry and got me a snack. And they cleaned up everything, the pool and everything. And then that, so I had him at 9:16 p.m. and by like 12:30 everybody was gone, and it was just the three of us in bed,
Yeah.
and we all got like some sleep. And my son, like we had tried to get him to like latch and stuff, and he was so sleepy. And looking back on it, I guess I feel like I should have been more worried, but like I wasn't. And my midwife was like, okay, like if he doesn't eat for like 5 hours, like
Yeah.
then we need to like look into something. But like we probably took a nap for like 3 or so hours, and then he ate when we got up, so I
Mhm.
wasn't like too worried about it.
Yeah.
I think he was just sleepy.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was like very peaceful.
Yeah.
Like it was just so nice to be in our own bed. Nobody was coming in and out checking on us. Like we had the lights off. It was just, it was so much better. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'll always like it's, and this kind of like goes back to what I was saying about I didn't realize how traumatic my first birth was until this one. Like
Mhm.
I just just comparing and contrasting them and just like the whole experience, I think about my home birth like every day, like
Hmm.
every single day, and how I'm
Hmm.
like, I just like want to get pregnant again, just have a home birth, like,
Yeah.
but I'm a little maxed out with the three kids right now, but like I love the experience and like
Mhm.
it was so beautiful and I sound so cheesy, I feel like when I say this, but it was like such a human experience. Like it made
Yeah.
me feel like what it was to be a human. Like
Hmm.
everything around us is so fake. Like our food is fake. Like
Yeah.
everything is fake, but that wasn't fake. Like
Yeah.
that was very, very real. And
Hmm.
it was like, yeah, it was painful, I guess, at some points, but like I don't care. I would do it today. Like I would do it in
Yeah.
an hour if I knew like I don't know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess like that's my story.
Yeah. Thank you. I really enjoyed listening to that.
Oh,
Um,
thank
One thing, I'm not sure if you mentioned it. I don't remember hearing you say anything about it. Were your other two present for the birth, or were they gone from the
They
house?
they were not. They were
Okay.
at my parents' house. For when I had like I thought about that for a while
Hmm.
and I just felt like I needed to be completely in the zone and
Yeah.
like not I mean, I'm sure you know like what this means, but like I'm the default parent. Like everything comes to me.
Hmm.
Everybody needs stuff from me. And like even if my husband's right there, like mom, I need a snack.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
and I just felt like I needed to not have that around me.
Yeah.
But if I did it again now, knowing kind of like what to expect, I probably would just keep them here.
Hmm.
And there's a chance that they would just be sleeping anyways. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know what you had chose for that, and I always like
Mhm.
hearing everyone's opinion because yeah, every woman is different on what they feel like they need for their birth. Some people
Mhm.
need to like really get into that zone and just like not have anyone bother them. And
Yeah.
being the default parent, that won't be able to happen with kids around. So
Yeah.
that would be really hard to like go in and focus. But some people really do want like the presence of their children there and they're able to like do both. So everyone's different, but what I really
Yeah.
like saying is like if you want to see if your kids want to be there, just have someone there as like a babysitter or like someone who's in charge of them. So if it
Yeah.
does get too much, you could always just have them like take them out of the room or maybe take them outside if it's like daytime or anything. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's always good to have like options for that.
Sure. Yeah. And that
Mhm.
would probably be what I would do next time. I'd probably have like my mom or something like be here.
Yeah.
Um and just like in case.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to touch on after your home birth, how did you kind of process your first birth after that? Because I know you said you didn't think of it as traumatic until afterwards.
Yeah, I guess I like saw like the cascade of interventions and how I was a victim to that.
Hmm.
Just like from the moment, well, I mean, just like the whole pregnancy, like you have to do this, you have to do that, and we're gonna monitor this and monitor that, and like felt like I didn't have a choice, and whatever like they said I had to do, like it
Hmm.
was law or something. And then just like the birth itself, like starting off with the doctor being like, your baby's gonna die. And
Yeah.
of course, like I don't want that to happen. So
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I'm like coerced and like scared into an induction that was probably not necessary at all.
Yeah.
Um, and just like, that led to um the epidural and then the pitocin and just like the on and off and upping and like just constantly trying to find that like balance of meds that was gonna like keep the pain away but also like keep things going and being stuck in the bed because I had to be monitored because of the pitocin, so I couldn't move, so I couldn't get in a good
Hmm.
position and she couldn't get in a good position,
Yeah.
and just like painful being stuck in a bed with like pitocin running through your body and like your
Hmm.
uterus just like
Yeah.
and then pushing on my back and coached pushing and not being able to really feel the contractions. Like the nurse was like, "Can you feel that contraction?" And I was like part of me was like sometimes I'd be like, "Yes," and then other times I'd be like, "No." And I
Yeah.
would like lie sometimes because I felt like I should have. Like I'd be like, "I think so. I don't know." And then like an hour into pushing, she was like, "Why are you doing it that way? Like, you have to push like you're having a bowel movement." I'm like, "Well, no one told me. Like, nobody
Yeah.
told me how to push."
Hmm.
Um, and then just like at the end, like the vacuuming and like the threats, like if we don't get her out on this last one, you're getting a C-section, and then the
Hmm.
episiotomy and just just like all the textbook things that happen,
Yeah.
and just like I feel like I went through almost all of them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then just like the home birth was just like I did what I felt I needed to do,
Hmm.
and it was like I was in control. I moved where I wanted to move. Um and like yeah, my midwife had to jump in there at the end, but like that's what she was for. That was her job, to like make sure, everything was good, and she helped in the way that she was like that's why she was there. Um so just like I called the shots, and then my first was just like I was just there. Like
Hmm.
like everything was like done to me and I wasn't
Yeah.
making any decisions.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a big difference between like them just doing these interventions because something possibly will happen and something
Mhm.
actually happening and like taking action on it. And that's
Right.
exactly what like your midwife did. Was it's not like she's like, "Oh, you might get shoulder dystocia. So let's do this preventative care before that way you don't get it." It's
Right.
like, "Oh, it's happening or it might be happening now. Like I see some signs. Let's take action now." Whereas
Right.
like in the hospital, all those interventions were, "Oh, this could possibly happen. We want to prevent this from happening, so we're going to do this now." But that just leads to more interventions. So,
Right.
yeah, it kind of just backfires. Um, but yeah, I'm glad you were able to experience like a more healing home birth after that.
Yeah, me too. I
Mhm.
Me too. I've just been like thinking like recently about just like inductions in general, and like I just don't know if there's even like justifying them. Like this with the C-section, like I'm sure like yes, there are situations where it's like okay, baby needs to come out now and we're going to do C-section. But
Yeah.
like inductions like just seem so unnecessary to me now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because they try to word it as like, "Oh, we need your baby to come out like soon, like now. So we're going to induce you." But inductions, when they're like early, they don't happen right away. It's not like you're induced and then you have the baby. It's not like a
Right.
C-section. You get induced and you're either like induced for a whole day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. It can be a long time. So if it's really that urgent and an emergency for your baby, an induction isn't the way to go. You would get a
Right.
C-section. So you're
Right.
right. It really doesn't make sense for inductions to be like, "Oh, this is urgent. We have to do this. You have to be induced." And it's like you don't
Yeah.
really have to do anything right now. Like maybe
Right.
something could start happening, but then that would just be an emergency C-section if it's really needed. So
Mhm.
yeah, I completely see where you're coming from for that.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about it a lot lately, like
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to get into. That could by itself be like a whole nother podcast episode of just like going into inductions and why they're really not needed most of the time. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's a big conversation.
it is.
um,
Aw.
and so you kind of said how after your home birth, you really dove deeper into learning about birth and like education and all that. So where did that lead you?
So, yeah, right after the home birth, I was like, wow. Like, I'm blown away about all the stuff I didn't know because nobody told me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, nobody ever, I mean, I had no idea like the hormones and like the role they play in like how your baby like rotates in your pelvis. Like all these things have to work together,
Yeah.
and like it's not on a set timeline. Like it's not like okay, if this then this like and then there's like an hour increment. Like it's not like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
everything has to work together and it takes as long as it takes
Mm-hmm.
basically. And just like no one ever mentioned that, and I
Mm-hmm.
think like a lot of people don't know that, and because nobody teaches them. So
Yeah.
just like educating myself on that, and then I was like, you know what, I really like to be a doula. So I started that like certification. It was like all online, so it took me a while because just like with 3 little kids it was a lot. And then I was like, I really like the education side of it as well. So I started taking a certification for that as well. And just kind of like slowly started my Instagram and like did a web page and just very like slowly got into it. Like I just went to my first birth like 2 weeks ago. So
Aw.
yeah, I'm just like slowly going into it because my husband's schedule is like really crazy, and like
Mm-hmm.
childcare is just kind of like anxiety inducing with that. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, like I'm trying to build out kind of like an education like in person but also online, and having some courses, and just like really sharing all the information that I had no idea about, and I feel like a lot of people don't know. So if
Yeah.
you want to know, like I'll put it out there. And I know some people don't want to know and they don't care because they're cool with, how everything is. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have like a little feeling of like, oh, I don't think this is right, like there's more, like look into
Yeah.
it.
Uh-huh. There's so much more. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Definitely. And so if anyone wants to connect with you over on your social media page, what is your handle?
It is Mama Led Birth Doula, and then my website is mamaledbirthdoula.com.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and leave those linked below. So if anyone wants to just like easily click over and access those, they can and connect with you there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your stories with us. And your amazing healing home birth story was great. I loved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun to talk about it.
Wasn't that such a great story from Jen about her healing home birth after one traumatic hospital birth and then another not so amazing hospital birth? I love how she shared with us that home birth was not on her radar at all. But once she heard that the hospital policies were not quite what she had wanted, that she started looking into home birth as an option, and that led her to an amazing birth and even a kind of path change for her career as well. So I really love how everything kind of just came into play for her, and now she's able to educate other women on how birth really should be. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to review and leave a rating. We'll be back with more home birth stories.